Coming up next, a new terrifying story from our series, The Whispering Grave, When the Jinn Awakens. But first, if you want even more tales of terror, check out the playlist, where we read the most frightening stories from our subscribers. There's something new every week. And now, without further ado, let's begin. Deep in the mountains of an unnamed country, nestled amongst rolling hills and dense forests, was a small, forgotten village. Life here was peaceful, far from the noise and pollution of the outside world. That was until sundown, for when the sun dipped below the horizon, an unsettling hush would fall over the town, and all was not as peaceful as it seemed. At the edge of the village sat an old abandoned graveyard, its weathered tombstones silent witnesses to generations past. It was a place of rest, or so it should have been. Because locals whispered of strange voices that echoed through the graveyard at night, calling out names, they said that if you crossed the graveyard after sunset, these spirits would reach out from their graves and drag your soul down to join them. Of course, everyone knew this wasn't true, right? Just an old wives' tale to scare children into behaving. Or did it hold some sinister truth? No one dared test fate. No one except 3 close friends. They were known throughout the village for their wild sense of adventure, and penchant for mocking the superstitions of others. They scoffed at the legends surrounding the Whispering Grave and convinced themselves it was just the wind playing tricks. Now, they had a dare. Who would be brave enough to enter the graveyard alone at midnight, the witching hour? All 3 wanted to prove their bravery, and so it was decided. Each would take a turn entering the graveyard. The first to show signs of fear or break and run would lose, but they agreed to return before 1 a.m. to avoid waking the spirits. With that settled, they waited for nightfall. As darkness enveloped the village, the friends prepared for their eerie midnight tryst. When the clock struck 12, the first boy took his courage in both hands and stepped towards the graveyard. The full moon was hidden behind clouds, leaving the world in near darkness. An eerie silence blanketed the graveyard, broken only by the rustling of leaves and the distant hoot of an owl. As he walked deeper into the graveyard, the air grew colder, heavier, the smell of decay and damp earth filling his nostrils. He walked past moss-covered headstones, each one a silent sentinel marking the final resting place of a villager long gone. The iron gates creaked ominously in the wind, seeming to warn him of the unseen dangers that lay within. Suddenly, his eyes caught sight of something that made him stop in his tracks. In the center of the graveyard was a grave that hadn't been there before, freshly dug and filled with a black, oily substance. It was like nothing he'd ever seen. Fear pricked at him. Did someone die in the last moments? Was this the reason for the graveyard's evil reputation? Before he could ponder further, a sudden gust of cold wind blew around him, carrying whispers that seemed to slither into his ears. "Why are you here? This place is cursed," they hissed. Startled, he spun around but saw nothing in the gloom. Had he imagined it? Just then, he felt a cold, bony hand on his shoulder. He whirled around, his heart pounding, but found no one. Was he truly alone? And then, the earth began to bubble and spit. The newly dug grave split open, spewing thick, black smoke that swirled and writhed like a living thing. The stench of sulfur filled the air, making his eyes water. What was happening? And then from the smoke emerged a tall, gaunt shadow with glowing red eyes that burned with otherworldly fire. Its gaze fixed on him, sending shivers down his spine. A low growl rumbled in its throat, shaking the very foundations of the graveyard. This was no ordinary being. It was a Jinn, an elemental spirit of immense power that slumbered beneath the graveyard. It had been disturbed, and now it was furious. More graves began to rumble and shake. The ground split open, and one by one, faceless spirits poured forth, drawn to the disturbance. They circled the boys, their eyes glowing with malevolent glee. Panic surged through him. He turned and fled, racing through the graveyard, desperate to escape. The Jinns let out ear-piercing screams that echoed through the night. He stumbled and fell, scraping his palms on the rough stone. But he didn't dare stop. He had to get away. As he scrambled to his feet, he noticed the wrought iron gates, their hinges groaning like a wounded animal. Hope surged through him. If he could just reach those gates, he might be safe. But just as he neared them, the gates slammed shut as if sealing their fate. With a deafening crash, the ground trembled under the weight of the Jinns. Their leader snarled, its voice a guttural rasp that scraped against his bones. "You cannot escape us now, little one. You belong to us." One of his friends emerged from the trees, his face ashen, eyes wide with terror. The Jinn lunged, reaching out with a smoky hand that wrapped around the boy's ankle and dragged him down into the ground. With a muffled scream, the boy vanished into the darkness, leaving his sandal behind as a grim reminder of his fate. Only one of their group remained, trapped and paralyzed with fear in the center of the graveyard. The Jinn advanced, its burning eyes boring into his soul. "Now you belong to us," it hissed, its voice echoing through the graveyard like a death knell. The other spirits closed in, their distorted faces inches from his, their voices blending in a horrifying chorus. "Join us," they rasped. "Join us forever." His torch sputtered and died, plunging him into absolute darkness. Screams tore through the night, echoing the terror in his heart. Then silence. The screen went pitch black. When the first rays of sunlight touched the village, peace returned to the sleepy town. Birdsong replaced the whispers of the night, and the rustling leaves whispered secrets only the trees could understand. Villagers began to stir, unaware of the horrors that unfolded in the darkness. One by one, they emerged from their homes, stretching and yawning, ready to start their day. Among them was the boy who had dared enter the graveyard. But something was terribly wrong. He wasn't alone. Beside him walked another boy, identical in every way, except his eyes were completely white, devoid of the life that shone in his comrade's orbs. His skin was ashen, his lips moving soundlessly as if reciting words only he could hear. The villagers gasped, recognizing the missing boy. But when he turned, they recoiled in horror. "The Jinn has awakened," he whispered, his voice a hollow echo of its former self. "And the whole village will be next." Then he began to laugh, a chilling cackle that echoed the madness in his eyes. The villagers screamed, stumbling back in terror as the Jinn had clearly claimed the boy as its own. Fear gripped the village, turning their peaceful town into a battleground between the living and the restless dead. But that's just the beginning of the legend, because according to local lore, this was just the start of the terror. The Jinn's awakening heralded a terrifying new chapter in the village's history. And every year on the anniversary of its release, the spirits rise again, seeking to claim more souls for their master. Will the villagers stand a chance against the wrath of the awakened Jinn? Or will they become the next victims of the Whispering Grave? That's all for tonight. And if you survived the Whispering Grave, be sure to stay tuned for more terrifying tales. Until then, sleep well. Or maybe don't, because nightmares can be fun too.